My name is Caitlin Quillen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am one of the 4 career coaches at the Wisconsin School of Business. I'm super excited today to talk about strategy and how you can leverage that when you're picking your major and when you're thinking about your future career. Lauren, if you could take us to the next slide. So today we're going to mostly focus on that strategy component, which can mean a lot of different things depending on how you want to leverage it. So when we think about strategy within any context, basically, let's break it down so that we really take a step back and think about, like, what does strategy even mean? You know, I hear that word a lot with, like, I have a strategic mindset, or I'm leveraging strategy within my internship. When we think about strategy, it's a specific set of actions or plans to achieve one or more long-term goals. That's what it is. It's just a specific way of doing that. Usually when we think about this, we're thinking about settings where you are setting these goals in advance, you have priorities, you're determining intentional actions, you're really thinking about how can I mobilize my resources so that I can be strategic in the way that I accomplish a goal. So even further than that, I want to break it down into different types of strategy. So one form of strategy is predicting future issues. When we think about that, it immediately takes us to a lot of those math or data-based majors and major-based careers too. So over here on the right, you can see like an actuarial analyst, director of risk management, a statistician, a research analyst. These are just some of the careers that you could have if you're curious about predicting future issues. Again, thinking about like any sort of major that leverages intelligence, data, analysis, those types of realms. Another way that you could think about strategy is creating efficiency. We think about efficiency, it could be within people, it could be within processes, it could be within placement. So some roles you could see from that would be field operations manager, supply chain analyst, transportation planning, project manager, any of these. And that efficiency is very important when you think about the different places of majors. So a lot of times we could see this with like actuarial science, maybe operations, maybe math, maybe even something that has to do with education. Any of those really could work within that creating efficiency. The third category is tech, product, and process. And a lot of times when I meet with students, the word tech immediately scares them and they run away. And I actually am really excited because we have a panelist today that's going to talk a little bit more about that tech and hopefully make you less scared of that one word. When we think about strategy within tech, you could think about it as either working directly with the technology or working to oversee the enhancement of the technology, which are two different things. So some jobs that you might see from that: a business process manager, a brand strategist, a business analyst, cybersecurity consultant, a project manager. This could be in anything that has to do with a product, a process, people, any of those components really. Some majors that might really work with this: operations, again, going back to actuarial science, if you're looking at how can we increase a certain process or a certain product. You could think about management, you could think again about math or data, any of those. You're probably starting to see that there's a theme of different majors that are occurring more often. So that last one, human capital. So this one to me sticks out the most as what a lot of students want. They say, I want to work with people. And that could mean a lot of different things. When we think about strategy and people, it is leveraging relationships. It is using resources to promote and to help people accomplish a shared goal, those types of things. So some jobs that you might see from that: a human resources strategy analyst, maybe a consultant, a business development representative, talent acquisition analyst, and again, that project manager. All 4 of these kind of strategy placement careers could be a variety of majors. So I want you to think a little bit less about the major and a little bit more about what's the career outcome and how can I work backwards to figure out the major, because you could do a whole variety of majors to leverage strategy in different workplaces. So as we're thinking about this, I really want us to hear from our 4 panelists. We are so lucky today. We have 4 women joining us who have each been in 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 or 4 of these different areas with previous internships. So I'm going to stop talking and we're going to turn it over to Hannah, who's going to talk a little bit more about predicting future issues.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Hi guys, I'm Hannah. I'm actually a senior. I'm graduating in May, so I'm just about at the end of my college, but I am a student in the business school, and within there, I am pursuing a double major track in marketing and then risk management and insurance. So I'm guessing when you guys hear risk management and insurance, some of the post grad jobs you think of are like credit manager, insurance agent, credit analyst, whatever that may be. And I know when I was pursuing that major originally, I was kind of nervous about those roles and kind of confused about how risk could integrate into marketing. And I want to just start off by debunking the myth that that is kind of just the fixed bubble of career paths that you can pursue, because I found that risk is actually embedded into every single facet of every single business under the sun. So I'm no matter what kind of industry you're interested in, I think risk can absolutely apply to it. So I think I've learned that this field is more based in psychology, predictions, and strategizing on behalf of an entire business than I would have ever thought. And with that, I'll explain why, because obviously that is pretty developed from my experiences at Discover Financial Services. So that is where I've interned the past 2 years and where I will be returning post grad as a full time rotational participant. I actually found this opportunity through a flyer distributed to WIB and then at the actual fall career fair where I was able to connect with the recruiters I'd previously spoken to and go through their interview process. So within there, my first role on the marketing business risk new initiatives team was completely focused on predicting future issues. So how we did this and what it was called at Discover is a ramp. So that means risk and mitigation plans. And you guys will all find a million acronyms at your own companies as well. So we created ramps on a daily basis. And basically, that meant that we would brainstorm and further identify just any risk facing the projects that we partnered with. So, what does that mean and who did we partner with? This was really like the key and the underlying framework of the whole role. So, because we were called new initiatives, any software technology, any product, service, a credit card, a student loan, rewards program, cashback, whatever you think of when you think of Discover, we partnered with those teams and helped them develop their new projects from the ground up through their launch date and through those initial 5 or however so many years of its performance as a project. So any of those companies under that umbrella at Discover is called cards and credit operation management. So these are concepts that I had no idea what they were all about going into Discover, and now some that I feel like I could really intimately talk to and kind of map out all of the details of. And that is because I worked in this risk management role and because I realized that it really supported the baseline framework of just the general strategies that Discover was bringing forward into the future. And a lot of those are to kind of segue into being recognized as more of a technology focused and innovative startup like bank, because another kind of myth, I guess, would be like financial institutions are kind of set in their ways and kind of fixed in their culture. And that is something that I also was kind of nervous about going into Discover. I didn't really know about what financial services was. And I've learned that not only is Discover a bank, it's a credit card, it's a debit card, it's international, it's marketing. And it really has such a large plethora of opportunities that I just had never thought of when I thought of a bank. I thought it was really limiting. So I really wish I would have known that as a freshman, because I feel like I was kind of under a bias when I was going through the initial recruitment process, because I really in my head just segregated finance is over here and marketing is over here and risk is over here. And I learned a huge advantage if you're like me and don't really know what you want your career to be as a sophomore or a junior or a senior, honestly. Working for a large corporation that really has those opportunities because they have all of those teams and so many things going on a daily basis is a really big advantage to being able to kind of advocate for yourself and talk about what experiences you want out of an internship and kind of be placed within certain roles to kind of speak to those opportunities in general. So yeah, basically my entire first summer was strategizing on behalf of Discover, because such a large corporation like they are, not identifying the smallest risk could end up being like $1 billion mistake, I guess you could call it. So really figuring out how to embed those mitigation plans to minimize risks where possible and where appropriate was key to the success of all those marketing projects. And understanding that marketing and risk were one together was something that I never thought of, and really just solidified that I could have a career of two fields that we're seemingly not intertwined, but we're truly completely intertwined in so many facets of that business. I'll just take like a few seconds to speak about my second internship because I didn't really glaze over that at all. So like I said, working for Discover in a large corporation was really beneficial because I could kind of voice that desire to have a more marketing focused experience. So I could get experience in both of those fields really directly. So in summer of 2020, remotely, as you could probably guess, I returned to Discover to work in their portfolio office. So that means any client or customer that has been approved for a credit card or a debit card and is now joined Discover and can bank with them is now part of the portfolio. So I mapped out an entire end-to-end user process experience of becoming an authorized user. I won't bore you with the details, but that really taught me how to strategize under the idea of COVID because as you guys obviously know and can predict, it was really tough on a lot of clients and customers at Discover. So really understanding how to effectively communicate to authorized users and create programs that were beneficial and educational for them to loop them into how to build credit and what that all means was a huge facet of my internship in a totally different sphere of strategy. So yeah, strategy, I can say, I've said it a million times, so it's clearly embedded into internships, into the business, into all things moving forward. I'm sure you'll all see it's very technology heavy, as is everything nowadays. But I hope those insights were helpful and feel free to ask any questions because I know that was a lot of information. So thanks for letting me talk to you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'd love for you to maybe follow up. I know there was a lot of really high level things that you were talking about that are so exciting.
Yes.
What advice would you give to someone who is a freshman or a sophomore that has had no internship experience whatsoever and is maybe applying for these roles that have these different acronyms and these different words that it's kind of like, oh, what does that mean? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say off the bat, don't get in your head. I honestly didn't know I was doing risk until 12 hours before the internship started. I was informed by like the head of the team that I wasn't doing marketing and I was terrified. So right off the bat, remember that you're there to learn and they are also there to teach you because they are tasked and responsible for kind of providing that other half too. So it's easy to feel like you just want to give everything, but remember that they're also providing you with those tools. So you don't have to come in knowing the acronyms. And I guess when I was feeling confused or intimidated or unclear, teaching yourself how to ask questions and ask for feedback was the key to being a successful intern. So even if that's in the interview process, if you're not in the role yet, just saying something like, I heard you mentioned ramp. I'm guessing from what you've been speaking about, this has to do with some of those risk ideas and platforms, but could you speak a little bit more? I find that so exciting. Or just framing it in a way that you're eager to learn and just remembering your tone and that it's okay to ask questions. And it actually often shows that you're listening, which is probably going to end up being a benefit. So just know that you're there to learn. I've said it so many times now, I can hear myself repeating myself, but it's totally okay not to know something. And once I learned that and became confident in that, I was able to also extract more value from the role.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Okay,
Yeah, of course.
switch over. We're going to hear more from Hannah in a little bit, but I want to switch over to Alyssa, and I would love to hear a little bit more about you leveraging strategy while also creating efficiency.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I'm currently a junior triple majoring in OTM, marketing, and supply chain management. My journey here at Wisconsin has been one with many different twists and turns. So I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of my background. So I started out here at Wisconsin as a pre-med student. So I was actually taking classes in chemistry and biology my first semester of freshman year. Halfway through, I decided it wasn't really for me. I dropped all those classes and I was feeling a little bit confused as to what to do. And then went out on a whim in the spring and joined Women in Business. So I applied, got into the club, and then I started going to their events, and it got me really interested in business. So that was when I made the decision to apply to the School of Business, eventually getting in the next summer. So I had kind of a crazy journey to get to where I am today, but I actually started out as an MHR major. So that was where my first internship was. I interned at a small healthcare company in Minnesota. And I worked on creating efficiency through their hiring process. So what I did was I tried to process applications at a faster pace than before I was hired on. So what that involved was I basically read through applications each day. These were usually nurses that were applying to work at one of our nursing facilities. I would do reference checks on those applications. I would bring them in for an in-person interview, and then I would eventually offer them a job. So I was able to by the end of the summer, I was able to increase the amount of applications I processed from 20 to 25. So that's one way to create efficiency through like a human capital type of role. But I wanted a little bit more after that summer. I wanted something more analytical mixed with people. So I decided to switch my major once I got back in the fall. How I decided on my new major, I literally attended all of those, blank 101, marketing 101, OTM 101 seminars that the Wisconsin School of Business puts on throughout the year. And when I attended the supply chain one, I was super intrigued by the versatility of the field. So you can work in logistics, you can work in transportation, you can work in procurement. And another thing that drew me to it was that you could triple major really easily. So the classes for supply chain, OTM, and marketing line up super well in your schedule. And usually you can take one class and cover all three majors. So it's a really sweet deal and they all intertwine really well. And then last December, when I was looking for an internship in the summer, I literally went on LinkedIn. I filtered by where I lived, which is Minnesota, and I typed in supply chain intern, and I just went and applied to the majority of the internships I saw on there. And eventually one gave me a call back, and it was Daikin Applied. So they make HVAC units, which is kind of boring, but it's heating and ventilation and AC. I don't know anything about that industry, but I was super excited about the supply chain intern opportunity. And basically what I did there was I created efficiency through evaluating the performance of Daikin suppliers. So a supplier can be anyone from supplying, screws for an air conditioning unit to the sheets of metal that they use to make a heating unit. So what I was doing was I was looking at, are these suppliers delivering the parts on time? How many of those delivered parts are defective or broken? And what kind of like green initiatives or environmental practices does this supplier have in place? And then I'd give them a ranking based on that number and then relay that information to Daikin to determine if they want to drop the supplier or if they want to keep working with them. Another thing that I did was I worked with data a lot in this internship. So if you really like numbers, this is a great opportunity for you to get your feet wet with some numbers as well as some people skills. And basically I used data to visualize on a map where Daikin was spending the majority of their money. So for instance, in Asia, I would put, the number that they spend on suppliers in Asia, and then in the Americas, and then in Europe. And then also send that to the higher up managers to, give them insight on where they're spending their money and maybe where they should focus more towards on those areas with, less spend. So through these two internships, they're very different. One was HR, one was supply chain, but I essentially used leveraged efficiency in both of them. And they were both great experiences. And I'm super excited to answer any questions that anyone may have about these roles.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I know you mentioned a little bit that you attended all the Supply Chain 101, OTM 101, all of those. Could you tell us a little bit more about maybe your thought process and how you surrounded yourself with the right academics or the academic choices from like the beginning of your journey to now? I know you mentioned some of the events, but maybe a little bit more in depth for us on like how the heck did you pick these majors?
Yeah, sure. So I knew that I wanted to leverage numbers in my future career. So I knew that I wanted a major that was more technology, analytically oriented, but I also wanted that mix of people, working with people, which is what marketing is. And then supply chain and OTM are more analytical, working on improving processes and things like that. So I knew going in that I wanted a good mix of those. And for me personally, MHR was only the people side and not the analytical side. So I decided to look into supply chain first because that was what most intrigued me. After I went to the Supply Chain 101 seminar, I learned about the pairing of the other two majors, and that just sealed the deal for me because it was a great way to graduate with a degree that I was super interested in, while also pursuing the two things that I really wanted in a full-time role, which is people skills and analytical skills. So I would really encourage everyone, if you're not sure, to attend those, Supply Chain 101 seminars or like learn about marketing seminars, because they give you a lot of insight into the potential careers you can go into and how you can use the skills that you learn in the major in those careers. So it's a lot of real world examples, and that's ultimately what led me to pick supply chain, marketing, and OTM.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's so helpful. Okay, we're going to hear more from Alyssa. I'm going to switch it over now to Grace, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about tech and process.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a junior, and I'm currently double majoring in information systems and management. So I came in knowing that I wanted to do business. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up, always kind of starting little businesses like babysitting or party planning or anything like that. So I really knew that's what I wanted to do. And then coming in, kind of like Alyssa just said, I knew that I really was drawn to tech and analytics and leveraging technology to kind of help businesses grow. And IS is a very small and misunderstood major, in my opinion. And kind of like Caitlin said earlier, tech is very broad and can be very intimidating. And especially with IS, it's kind of has this perception of just being coding or being related to super big companies like Google. But tech really encapsulates a variety of industries and companies, and also is very present in every single organization. Nowadays, every single organization needs to have technological capabilities and data analytics to be able to actually be successful and grow. So obviously I'm pretty passionate about that, which is why I chose IS, and then also wanted to combine it with that people side and creating relationships, being a leader. So that is why I decided to combine it with management. So the facet of the tech industry that I kind of got pretty drawn to was healthcare technology, as it really combines that innovation and also keeps helping people at the core of what they do. So last summer, I interned at Teladoc Health, which is a virtual comprehensive healthcare platform. It's kind of a mouthful. So they offer everything through an app, from general telemedicine, so you'd go to them for things like strep throat or a cold, primary care, expert medical opinions, behavioral health like therapy, nutrition, really anything you can think of, and it's all accessible through an app. So I want to touch a little bit on how I found this internship and how I got it. Because personally, I'm someone who, isn't really set on staying in the Midwest. I'd like to go somewhere else. And that sometimes is a little challenging being at Madison. It's a great school, but it is primarily Midwest focused. So how I approach it is a little unconventional, but I start kind of with that industry, so that healthcare technology, and then narrow it down and research companies who kind of fell under that realm, and also companies who had missions that I thought aligned with my values and what I wanted in a company. So Teladoc Health kind of checked all the boxes. I bugged the recruiter a lot on LinkedIn, got some interviews, really clicked with everyone, and was luckily offered the position. So there I worked in client operations, and I had two primary projects that both definitely encapsulated tech and process. So the first one was designing and implementing reporting processes for key performance indicators, or KPIs, for the entire client operations department. And the other was finding and implementing a new internal ticketing system, which basically is a system for different departments and teams to talk, share data, track processes, track their milestones. And both of these projects were kind of related in, tracking people's progress, their milestones, and overall just trying to be able to present and share the value that our department, client operations, was having on the entire organization. So with KPIs, the way that I kind of used tech and process was also kind of unconventional. So Teladoc has done, I think, over like 15 mergers and acquisitions in the last 10 years. So that was a lot. And that means that there's a lot of systems, a lot of processes that have been overlapping, and no one had ever really gotten to the bottom of that and built KPIs. So there was pretty lackluster reporting capabilities in our current systems. So how I kind of approached that was meeting with each team and understanding their processes, the major milestones in the tasks that they do, how do they relate to the other teams, what would be valuable to track, and then kind of taking it a step further and thinking about, okay, what can we report on with our current systems? What can we build that we really need to be able to report on valuable insights and data? With ticketing, then, this also was an interesting project because I got to research and kind of find different processes about how the different teams would like to be able to talk to each other, what are their desired capabilities of a new system, kind of working with the IT department, seeing what's even feasible with the current system. And then what was exciting about this is I kind of luckily fell into a broader project that was happening coincidentally because of a different merger where a company we acquired, we were merging their ticketing system with ours. So I, as an intern, was able to kind of get a front row seat on this project and be able to advocate for the client operations department and integrate what we would like in a new system in this big, huge overall project about making a new ticketing system. So both of these projects were definitely centered around using technology to kind of gain insights on your business practices and figure out how to optimize them and report on them, and then building those processes to support that. So obviously this all relates to strategy, and it took a lot of strategy to kind of, figure out between what we had, what we didn't have, what could I find, what research did I need to be able to complete about this. And the last thing I just want to say is that the experience I had is very applicable to many different industries, departments, majors, really anything you want to do. And I'd say regarding tech and process, my biggest advice is just to be creative, reach out to people, get as much information and diverse opinions as you can. And that will really make it a lot easier when trying to approach, creating processes and using technology to execute them.
Thank you, Grace. I feel like your experience is so well connected to your passions personally, and I just love when that happens for students. You hinted at this a little bit, but I'd love for you to dive a little deeper. When we think about, reaching out to East Coast, West Coast, specific employers, maybe you could talk a little bit about any of the tangible or applicable tools or tactics that you strategize to figure out, like, how does an employer match my career goals? Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So the first resource that I literally tell every single person to use are Badger alums. So I always started with probably my sophomore year by just reaching out to literally so many different Badger alumni. I think I literally just filtered San Francisco because I was like, I feel like there's a lot of tech companies there that I am interested in. And then most of the time, I'd say 80% of them always responded. We had conversations, and that was super helpful in kind of at the broadest level, figuring out, what do I want to do? What different aspects of tech am I interested in, because it is so broad. And that's kind of how I narrowed it down to healthcare technology. And then with the companies, then I, again, relied on networking. I just targeted it a little bit more to alumni or different connections who were specifically working in healthcare tech companies. I also just do a lot of market research. It sounds really nerdy, but because we are students, we get access to a ton of market research databases through the business school. And that can provide a lot of insights on different companies, funding levels, how they're doing, what their performance has been, their future projections. And it sounds really complicated, but it's actually pretty cut and dry and a really helpful tool to be able to kind of analyze what companies you'd be interested in.
Thank you so much, Grace.
Yeah.
All right, let's head over to Mallory, who is going to talk to us about human capital.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Mallory. I'm a junior, and I'm majoring in management and marketing. First off, I decided on the business school partially because I was so into DECA and FBLA in high school. Right from the beginning, I joined FBLA and I joined DECA pretty soon after, and it was just two clubs that I super enjoyed. Senior year in DECA, I got super into HR. There was a whole category just for HR, and so that's part of how I picked the management major. But I also took some marketing classes in high school, and that's when I really found out how much I love marketing. So both of those orgs in high school are part of how I picked my majors, but I actually went into college thinking that I was going to be a lawyer, which is this whole other crazy story. I thought I was going to be doing business law, which I am not doing. But really what I found out is more kind of through trial and error, which I'm guessing some of you have found. It's pretty common to switch your major in college. I always knew I wanted to do business. I just thought I would be doing poli-sci too. But I found out, the more business classes I took, the more I found out how much I loved it. And the more I found out it came naturally to me. So a piece of advice that I have there is if something's easy for you, keep doing it, because that probably means you're better at it than you realize. I would also say like try not to be super nervous, try not to put like a super ton of pressure on yourself about picking your major. Cause like I said, like tons of people switch their major. People switch it even like second semester, junior year. So just be careful about the classes you're picking, talk to your advisors, and like Hannah was saying earlier, I think it was. No, sorry, it was Alyssa. Like Alyssa was saying, go to those sessions, like learn about the majors in the business school, like seriously do it, because that's so helpful. Like it's their job to give you that information. They know what they're talking about. For my internships, so you can see on the slide, I worked for the Let's Minocqua Visitors Bureau and Chamber of Commerce. That was in Minocqua, Wisconsin. If you look at that picture of the town on the right-hand side, that's actually an event that I helped organize. So if you're from Wisconsin, you may be familiar with an event called Beefarama, which myself and 5 other women plan every year. So it generally attracts a crowd of like 20,000 plus people, which is a huge number when you consider that our town's population is 7,000. So myself and the five other women I work with at the chamber, we plan literally everything about the event. Like we pick like the number of porta potties, we advertise it, we order all the food, and part of that is ordering ginormous beef roasts and then getting business to sign up and roast them on the streets. We order a bouncy house, we put on a craft show that has about 150 vendors every year. Like there's so many components to it. So that's where like the human capital management comes in, part of that, because we're working ultimately with people. So like the craft show that I mentioned, I would say like the biggest the biggest thing I ever did in my internship was one summer they just gave a whole craft show to me. They told me like, this is your event. And so I had to plan the porta potties, the parking, the shuttle bus, the food. I had to physically take, we have this big pipe thing. I had to physically take a 10 by 10 section of pipe out into the park and spray paint around it to mark where people were putting their tents. So it was every single thing about that event was all me. So I would say like my internship gave me an enormous amount of responsibility, especially in that way. The way that I got that internship was actually through like networking around my hometown. It was my DECA advisor and marketing teacher that actually helped me get that role. And my next internship, you can see upcoming on the bottom, I'm going to be working for Amazon this summer. I will be a workplace health and safety intern. So actually that past role is one of the things that I spoke about in my interview the most. So I would say when you're interviewing, definitely prepare for your interview and like study the company you're interviewing with, reach out to employees and past employees of the company, but also like try and remember all of the impressive things that you've done in your previous roles. Because definitely talking about wheeling that big 10 by 10 out and spray painting the park helped me in my interview. I also in that internship I also had like a ton of other responsibilities. The Chamber of Commerce does a lot on its own. They like promote and recommend local businesses, and they do anything from like electricians to caterers. Like anybody can be a member as long as they're a business. They created, promoted, and executed events like Beefarama, lots of 5Ks, lots of craft shows, all kinds of stuff like that. They marketed area events and sponsored others that weren't planned by us, responded to customer inquiries. Some of the things that I did like on a day-to-day basis was I would answer like any phone call that came when people would come in, because it's a physical location in every summer, you know, without COVID. I would have people come in and ask me questions all the time. It would be anything from like, I showed up today, I need a hotel for the next week, where can I stay? To like asking for a restaurant for dinner. Like, so that's again the human capital, like the learning how to talk to people, be professional, answer dumb questions without letting people know that it's a dumb question. Another thing that I did in that internship was actually in my first summer there, they had me cold call all 500 plus members and do this little survey with them of how is your summer going? Is there anything we could be doing better? how do you feel about your like being a member with the Chamber of Commerce? What can we improve upon? What could we be doing and what could you be doing to make your business better this summer? Things like that. So with the human capital realm and really any job, I would say you have to learn how to like professionally handle yourself, how to take criticism even when it's not your fault. There's a lot of like professional dynamics that you have to work on basically. But I also think it's important to note that like the whole point of an internship is to train you. So when you get to an internship, they're not expecting you to know anything. It doesn't matter what point you are in college, they're expecting to educate you quite a bit. So if you don't know something, do not be afraid to ask because that is the whole point. Like they are there to tell you what to do and to show you how. So that was a summary. I'm happy to answer any more specific questions later too.
Thank you, Mallory. I feel like you have so many life skills, and I'm just jealous that you got to work with all of this beef and at this really cool festival. I'd love if you could talk to us a little bit about the connection between what you learned in class and how that is applied to these really cool internships that you've had.
Yeah, for sure. So my marketing class is one of them that's related like the most directly because we did market, well, we do market tons of events. Now they are all online, but that's like the most direct thing. I had to learn how to like speak as a business, which is a little trickier than you might think. So that was a super direct correlation. This upcoming internship with Amazon, I know my MHR coursework is going to like relate super directly. That's another thing that I talked about like at great length in my interview is what I've learned so far through school.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So just silent round of applause for the four panelists. I feel like I've learned so much from the four of you just in this past chunk of time. I do want to turn it over and see if there are any questions. Feel free to put something in the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question while people are kind of formulating any questions that they might have. I would love to hear from Grace and Hannah, maybe a little bit more about what strategy means to you and how you've leveraged that mindset in your academic and your career choices. And we can start with whoever on mic. Oh, Hannah is on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I'll start with how it kind of bled into my academic experience. So I think this is an especially interesting question this year because your approach and strategy to school, I feel like, is largely based on the fact that it was in person or virtual. So this year, having every class virtually kind of caused my strategy to completely change because most classes are self-guided. So that means that time management is really like at the forefront of learning right now, and personal accountability more than ever, because you don't watch your lecture or catch up, then I mean, no one's going to make you do that. So I think just understanding the importance of accountability as a general strategy to your own education is important. I feel like that also ties into what Alyssa was speaking about with all of those 101 courses and meetings like this one, just really taking advantage of those opportunities, even if they're not required or you don't have an immediate benefit, like just understanding more about yourself, exploring new things, making connections with people that really might prove super valuable down the road. All of that is like a really important strategy to like creating your personal brand and all of that. And I think that directly ties into like further down the road, your strategy to your professional career is really all about who you know these days. Connections really run the business world, especially. So always taking advantage of like attending employee resource groups and going to social events and ice cream socials and doing that exercise class with your peers and going to the cafeteria instead of eating at your desk and things that are seemingly unimportant in the moment. The general strategy to take advantage of all opportunities, hold yourself accountable, and continue to make connections and expand your network, I really think are the most important aspects of being successful in business, because you learn so much from different people, and the more perspectives, the better. So,
yeah, I can kind of jump off of that. And regarding academics, I would definitely echo what Hannah said. personally, like I'm a very face-to-face interactive learner. So that with COVID, obviously took some strategizing to find out how I could still learn the best in a virtual environment and how to connect with my professors and the content and still learn. Regarding your career, I definitely would say just to kind of embrace the chaos of when you're approaching how you're going to strategize for your career, and understanding that it is not going to be a straight line at all, and not everything you do or experiences you have is necessarily going to directly align with the role or company you will be with in the future. For example, after freshman year, I really wanted to live in downtown Chicago, and I was fortunate enough to get an internship at a digital marketing agency downtown. Do I like marketing at all? Personally, no. But was it a great experience? Yes. And I learned so much. And that's a really good example of, that experience definitely gave me a good experience to be able to talk about when applying for internships the next year. So even if it doesn't directly align with that, far out there goal that you're trying to achieve, it's definitely still valuable.
Awesome. I want to shift. I know we're getting close to time, so I'm going to ask just 2 more questions. I'd love to hear from Mallory and Alyssa. Can you tell us a little bit about your biggest takeaway from your strategy-based internship experiences?
I can go first. So one thing I love about the strategy-based internships is the ability to actually make an impact at your company and see that impact long-term. So I know a lot of internships, you might feel like you're just doing busy work or paperwork or whatnot. But with strategy internships, you're really doing things that are going to benefit the company in the long run. For instance, the projects that I worked on last summer and even the summer before that are still in use today, as I'm still in contact with my mentor and employees at the company. And it's really fulfilling and rewarding to see the work that you're doing actually being put into practice by the company. So that's one, not really a takeaway, I guess, but one really cool thing about strategy-based internships. I guess a more specific takeaway would be just the people that you meet from the internships, like mentors, other interns, employees, because you can keep those connections down the line and then potentially have more options for opportunities in the future.
I agree 100% with all of that. That's something that I've noticed with Alyssa, or not with Alyssa, I'm sorry. That's something I've noticed with my role, like my past internships as well, especially because I was working for such a small company, is you can see the difference that you're making in an internship like this. I feel like the most literal takeaway that I've taken is soft skills. So those are the things that like can't be like taught to you by someone else, that you kind of learn like on your own. So like how I was saying before, like professional communication, learning how to be a good listener, like how to get along with others, like how to be a good employee, take criticism, things like that. Like that's something, regardless of how much you like your internship, that's all valuable to learn. And I would say in an internship, like what we're talking about, it's so much easier to gain those skills, especially when, like Alyssa was saying, you can see the impact that you're making and you can watch it even years later when they're still doing some of the things that you started.
Thank you both. That was awesome. So I'm going to have Lauren put up our final slide, just so if folks do need to leave, they can kind of bounce out. I want to do a huge shout out to the 4 of you. You were wonderful, very informative. I hope people were able to take away a lot from this. Kind of next steps for our people that are in the audience, if you are thinking, what do I do now? So the first thing I would say is take the post-test survey, which is all the way over on the left-hand side. By taking this post-test survey, you're going to get all the contact information for these 4 panelists. And I would highly encourage you to reach out if there was someone that said something that really stuck with you. This is your opportunity to say, hey, you want to do a virtual coffee chat? I'd love to learn more about your role and your experiences. You'll also get an email with a ton of just links and things that you can keep exploring. We do have 2 more events in this series. So if you're interested in learning more about leveraging work with people, that one's next week. And then if you're interested in talking about innovation with Intuit, that is in 2 weeks. So I encourage you to attend those. I also will say many of the panelists gave us shout outs, which I really appreciate. Go to more events, talk to your career coach, talk to your academic advisor. We are humans that are paid to tell you the knowledge in our head, which we get from other students that are amazing and tell us about their experiences. So think about making a commitment to yourself to meet with your academic advisor and your career coach at least once a semester. I highly recommend it. We also have a checklist that is very helpful with your academic exploration goals. And then we are trying to be really cool and all over social media. I would love if you would follow us on Instagram. It's not me, so don't worry. It's someone that's actually cool and has cool posts. And we do have a new website, which you can see right there in the link. We're going to hang out just a little bit in case you had a quick question. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you to the panelists again. You did so wonderful, and I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for attending.